I met my husband in late 1941. He and his brother Bill came over with the Newfoundland regiment, and they trained in England and came up to Scotland then to do some more training. And my husband's brother had a sister over there, and we had got to know her very well. So she told us one day that her brothers were coming over and they were coming to see her. And that was how we met the two brothers, my sister and I, and we married the two brothers. I was working at the time in the head office of the Colville's company. Now they were Iron and Steel Company, and I worked in the head office in Glasgow there for them. And that was when Vic and I really began to date and go out together until the boys left and went overseas to North Africa. So Vic came home again in 1945, and he came back for me in October of 1946, and we were married in January of 1947. After we were married, the war bride ships had all ended by then, so Vic and I and his sister, who had come over for our wedding to Glasgow, we flew back to Gander. At that time it took us 8 hours. We had to come down in the Azores to refuel, and I got into Gander with biggest storm I think I ever saw in my life. And I was wearing a little suit and a little hat with a veil on it on my head, and when I stepped out the plane my hat disappeared and I've never seen it since. I often wonder where it went. And then I was carried into the terminal because I had shoes, and the snow was so deep I couldn't get through it. So they carried me into the terminal where my sister was waiting for me. And then we took off and came to Cornerbrook. That was my trip to Newfoundland. It was September and I was 17 years of age. Had just finished school in the June when we heard on the radio that we were at war. And at that time I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I soon realized, and so did my parents, that you weren't going to do a lot of things you planned to do because the war had broken out. So I stayed home for a little while, and then I went to work, and I worked in the Colville's building in Glasgow. They were manufacturers for war materials, but I worked in the head office. And we just didn't know what war meant, and things went along quite smoothly for a while. But then came the time when we had our first air raid, and I was in the office at the time, and I was going from one place to another in the elevator. I went in the elevator, I closed the gates, I pressed the button, and I was between two floors when the siren went off and electricity was cut, just like that. And here I was by myself in an elevator between two floors. I couldn't go anywhere. When I was in the elevator, I really didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't hear very much in the way of other people in the office going. Of course, they were running to the shelters, and nobody would realize that anybody was in the elevator. I really don't remember how long I was there, but I know I sat down and I just patiently waited, but I was really terrified. But then when the all clear goes, you sort of take a deep breath and say, well, everything is safe now. And the all clear went, and I was able to press the button and the elevator went up to the next floor. I must say that the staff on the next floor were very apologetic and had not realized anyone, was in the elevator at that time. And as I say to this day, if I go anywhere and there's an elevator, I just walk the stairs. I really have not got over that yet. I don't think I ever will. The memories that we have most are when they would have an air raid late at night. And in our case, my father always said, now, one of you is responsible for taking down the chairs, another one's responsible for the box with the private papers, and another one was responsible for something else. So that when the siren went off to warn you, we each knew when we got out of bed what to take downstairs to the shelter with us. and we would go down to the shelter and take our chairs and pillow and something with us. We were probably there all night, and sometimes you'd hear the planes and sometimes you wouldn't. Then the all clear would go and you'd come back upstairs. This happened on a fairly regular basis for a while. And one night in particular, they were coming over, dropping them by parachute, so that you didn't know where it was going to land. And unfortunately it landed very close to us. And the houses across the way were completely demolished. Our apartment building was very badly damaged. We couldn't get back in to live again. So we moved to another community and rented a house in a little place called Paisley. And we lived there for several years. And then we went to Moss Park first, and then we moved again to a town called Paisley, where they had a wonderful ice rink. And we left Paisley. My father bought a house then in Westerton, Glasgow, and we moved back to there.